So, the Bible, most of us have read good chunks of it. It's a pretty common theme that we've seen all throughout it that, like I was just talking about, actually, whoa, holy moly. Blessing comes with obedience. This is especially prominent in the Old Testament. And with disobedience comes consequences. This is all throughout the Old Testament, especially you see it in the big speech that Moses gives at the end of Deuteronomy. He says, I lay before you this day blessings and curses. I lay before you life and death. Choose you this day which one you will have. It's like, oh man, that's intense. It's especially common to see these tropes play out in like the military efforts of the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. When a king is doing good and he's following the Lord, like they usually do better militarily, and when they're going sideways and kind of doing their own thing, stuff tends to go worse. But what we don't see a whole lot of, especially in the Old Testament, is like disobedience and blessing, or like partial blessing coming with like partial obedience. Like most of it in the Old Testament is pretty black and white. But today, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about one of those few instances. We're going to look at the mistakes of a foolish king and how he misses out on a blessing, and on the last work of a dying prophet. So we are going to be in 2 Kings chapter 13. If you guys want to go ahead and flip over there. I was going to pray here. I have it written down in my notes right there. But we just took an offertory, and double praying seems redundant, especially right after Miss Cassie. So triple pray, that's definitely too much. Don't want to pray too much out here. So 2 Kings chapter 13, we're going to start in verses 14. This is a wild narrative. It's a lot of fun. Wild stuff happens. They kind of play through some weird things. One of my favorite things in the Old Testament is that prophecy is usually very dramatic, and I think that's always very fun. So there's some prophecy in here. There's some bows and arrows, which is always fun. And if you pay attention, there's a number of really intriguing moments in this story, and they're made more intriguing when you know a bit of the context surrounding the story. So I'll talk about a little bit of that as we come up to it, and then we'll jump into the lesson. So 2 Kings chapter 13, starting in verse 14. Now, when Elisha had fallen sick with the illness of which he was to die, a rough way to start a story. Elisha is a prophet, the disciple of Elijah. Most of us here, I think, are aware of that. Elisha's main gig was getting on the backs of wicked kings in Israel, much like his mentor Elijah's was. It was a bad time, it was a rough job, and the kings didn't like him. So he's about to die. Joash, king of Israel, that's one of the wicked kings that didn't like him, went down to him and wept before him. He started crying, my father, my father. It's like, oh, this is starting to look better. Okay, maybe they're like going to reconcile or something. The chariots of Israel and its horsemen. Nope, okay, he's just here for something else. Okay, this isn't about Elisha. And Elisha said to him, take a bow and arrows. So he took a bow and arrows. I didn't really think of this until just now, but it's weird that he went to visit a dying man and brought bows and arrows. But that's neither here nor there. Take a bow and arrows. So he took a bow and arrows. Then he said to the king of Israel, draw the bow, and he drew it. And Elisha laid his hands on the king's hands, which must have been very awkward because, again, Joash hated this guy, and now they're like bear hugging. And he said, open the window eastward, and he opened it, which also must have been very awkward with Elisha holding Joash's hands while they have a bow drawn. And so they're like shimmying over to the door or the window and trying to open it. That's weird. That doesn't have anything to do with any of this, sorry. Then Elisha said, shoot, and he shot. And he said, the Lord's arrow of victory, the arrow of victory over Syria. For you shall fight the Syrians in Aphek until you have made an end of them. That phrase is important, an end of them. So remember it. And he said, now, seize your other arrows. And he took them. And he said to the king of Israel, strike the ground with them. And he struck 3 times and stopped. Then the man of God was angry with him, and he said, you should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times. Got him. Should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times. Then you would have struck down Syria until you had made an end of it, which is what he just said was going to happen in the previous thing. But now you will strike down Syria only 3 times. A number of very interesting things. Not the least of which that they shot an arrow just randomly out a window into the middle of the city. But I guess they're not worried about that because he wasn't a great king. So Joash had the opportunity here for an incredible blessing. He had the favor of the Lord promised to him like nobody in his dynasty had seen for generations, and he missed it. He was commanded to seize his arrows and act, but he didn't follow through, at least not to the level that Elisha was expecting, not to the level that he was supposed to. Now, admittedly, it seems to me that hitting the ground 2 times less than was expected of you seems like a really petty, kind of an arbitrary reason to miss out on a blessing. But it makes perfect sense when we compare it to the rest of the story of Joash's situation, when we understand that the failure to beat the dirt into submission is not the only mistake that Joash makes. Tonight, we are going to be looking at the 3 mistakes of King Joash. So the first one, the first mistake, it's really obvious, actually. It's like so obvious that we probably aren't even thinking about it. We're not considering it. It doesn't say it specifically in this story. It is implied all throughout the text. And that is that Joash went to the Lord as a last resort. Now we have to remember, Joash, he was an evil king. There's not a whole lot that is said about Joash, but a huge chunk of his paragraph before this story is dedicated to saying how awful of a king he was and how he served all of the gods of the nations around Israel. So, he doesn't have military strength because his father lost a big battle to the king of Syria just a little bit before this. And it was enough to keep Syria from conquering them, but also enough that they didn't have any guys left to do any fighting. So he knows that he's in trouble, and he knows his military can't save him. He worships the same gods as the other people that are worshiping, or the other people that are coming to come and fight him. And the way that favor of gods worked back then was you had to kind of buy them off. It was a big part of warfare. Is when you went to war with another nation, you would make sacrifices to their gods to try and get their favor away from them. It was the origins of psychological warfare. It's so much fun. So he knows that he can't get his God's favor because they're broke, because Syria kicked their butt in a war not too long ago. Now he hears that Elisha is sick and is getting ready to die, and he thinks, man, the only guy I know who has a line in with the God of the Hebrews, the God I'm supposed to be serving, he's about to die, so I better get in on this before I lose my chance to get a blessing. So Joash went to the Lord as a last resort. After all else failed, Joash went to the dying prophet seeking the Lord. But even if we are walking with the Lord, we can make the same mistake that Joash did in this situation. It is so easy for us to seek every single solution or possible answer to a problem before we finally, as if we're a nuisance to God, or even worse, as if going to him is a nuisance to us, we finally come before the throne of God and ask him to help us. But we know this isn't the relationship that we have with him. If you cherry pick a psalm at random, it's probably going to have something about the goodness of God and how he came through in a tough situation and brought deliverance. But we're not going to do that. I already picked one, so we're going to read this one. In Psalm 34, verses 4 through 5, and then we're going to jump down to 8, it says this. He says, I sought the Lord. There you go. He went to the Lord. I sought the Lord, and he answered me. And he delivered me from all of my fears. So not only did he answer me, not only did he fix my problem, he fixed all my problems. Those who look to him are radiant. Got a makeover. That's great. And their faces shall never be ashamed. So if you go to the Lord, you will never be let down. He's always going to come through. Jumping down to verse 8, he says, Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good, and blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. It's fun because Pastor Blake is preaching about taste and see tonight. Whoa, parallelism. So the Lord is anxious to be our help. He is anxious to help us when we are in times of trouble. He wants to be our refuge, but oftentimes we delay and we go to every other opportunity first, every other solution first. And the longer that we take to go to the right source to solve the situation, usually the worse the situation gets. Then we get mad at God for not acting on our behalf, or for making things harder as if it's a punishment. But that's not how life works. If you don't have what you need to fix a problem, and you just keep messing with the problem, usually the problem gets worse. This is exactly what happened to me the first time I had to replace my brake pads. I was in college, it was 2012, and it was summer break, so we drive home from Ohio. My sister and I, we share a car, and all the way back starting in like West Virginia, we start hearing just the squeal, It's the squeal. Every time you slow down, it's like we're in trouble. This is no good. Well, we get to like Kinston, and the squeal turns to a grind. So it's like, okay, so when we get home, it's not just brake pads we're replacing, it's the whole kit and caboodle. So that's great. So we nurse it all the way home, and sure enough, we've ground out like a 1/4 inch of steel from our drum. And I was like, man, we could have died, Caitlin. We should have pulled over. And it's like, oh well, we made it. So we made it. So we ordered the parts, and I'm gonna replace it in the driveway. Now, I've done it a couple times with my dad, and I watched like 2 YouTube videos. So I got it on lockdown. I know what I'm doing. I know everything that could go wrong, and I know how to fix it. So I take it apart. I've got it disassembled in like 15, 20 minutes. I'm like, this is going good. I'm going to be able to make it to my plans this afternoon with my friends because this is like my 3rd day back on summer vacation, and I haven't seen them in months. So that's the priority. So I start putting things back together, and that's when things get complicated because I don't know what I'm doing, and I didn't organize things since I took them out. So I'm replacing all the parts, and I get to like the finicky bits in the middle that fit on like the hydraulic press that the brake fluid goes in to push the pads out against the drum. And like, it's not going in there right. It's just like not quite fitting. I don't know what's wrong. I don't remember what I had wrong, but I just couldn't get them to line up in there. And so I finick with it for a little bit. I fidget, and I'm trying, and I can't get it to quite fit. And I look at it, and I figure like, I could go to my dad, because we've done this together many times, and he could do this right now. But I'm in a hurry, and also, I've got this. I watched the YouTube videos. I know what I'm doing. So I figure it's all steel. I'll go get a rubber mallet, and I'll just bang it into place. Because rubber can't hurt metal. Duh. So that's what I do, and it fits. I get it in there. I'm like, great. I put the screws in, I get everything secured. I don't reassemble it, because of course I'm gonna test it first, because once again, I'm a pro. I know what I'm doing. So I go turn on the vehicle, I hit the brakes, and I like press down, and I'm like, okay, it feels fine. And as I'm pressing down, that's like all of my pressure is just escaping. I'm like, whew, that's not a good sign. That's not supposed to do that. So I get out, I turn off the vehicle, I get out, I go around and I look, and there's just goo all over my brakes. I'm like, oh no, that's supposed to be on the inside. So I start messing with it some more. Now I don't want to go to my dad because also I just messed something up and I made the situation worse. So double don't want to go to my dad. I messed with it for like 2 hours. I watched like 4 or 5 more YouTube videos and I still can't figure it out. Can you believe it? So after hours of messing with this, I finally go to my dad. I'm like, Dad, look, I think I messed something up with the brakes. And he said, well, you've been out there for like 4 hours. So yeah, probably. I was like, okay, great, very encouraging, thank you. You want to come take a gander? And he's like, yeah, let's go look. So we walk out there, we look at it, and he just kind of silently stands. He kind of like does this rocking thing. He's like, yeah, you messed it up. My dad's from Detroit. I'm making him sound way more Southern in this story than he is. And he points at it and he says, you forced those pieces in there and it ripped the rubber cap on the line that the brake fluid comes through to the press. This is all the brake fluid. None of your brakes work now. You ain't got nothing inside of here. And you got to replace all that. It's like, oh, great, okay. So I go to my dad. He knows the solution in 2 minutes flat, and we order the parts to fix it. The issue is that along the way, I've made the situation worse. I made the consequences worse. It cost me more money because I had to order more parts. I also mucked up the pieces in the middle that I hammered into place because guess what? Hitting metal with hammers does mess things up sometimes. Keep that in mind. So I made the situation worse because I figured I'll just struggle and keep trying and overcome the challenge on my own instead of going to my father who knows the answer and can fix it lickety-split. And how many times do we struggle and fight and seek answers to stuff that we don't need to be fighting? We fight to overcome difficulties or challenges or to find answers to problems or to master one of our weaknesses or character flaws, and all the while we're making situations usually a whole lot worse, or we're compounding other problems and bringing them together because we are forcing things and we're doing things the wrong way. And finally, after all else fails, we go to our Father when we should have gone to him first. We keep him nice and comfortable in like a nice glass case that says like, break in case of emergency, and only then will we go to the Lord. But he wants to deliver you. He wants to bring you victory in your walk with him. That is one of the major functions of the Holy Spirit, to empower you to live up to your calling. So we need to stop waiting until we bleed out all of our brake fluid, and then none of our brakes work. Go to God first. Joash's first mistake is one that we are all far too familiar with. Joash went to the Lord last. And he went to him only to get what he needed, which brings us to his second mistake. Joash treated the Lord as a resource. In James, jump into the New Testament, chapter 4, verses 2 through 3. James is writing to established Christians scattered all throughout the Mediterranean. People who have been in church for a while. A lot of these people who are going to be receiving this circular letter are people who are in the churches that we see Paul interacting with and planting and discipling. So we know they've got good theology. We know they've got good leadership. And he writes to them and he says, "You desire and you do not have, so you murder." Wild. "You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and you quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and you do not receive because you ask wrongly to spend it on your passions." So James is confronting his leaders, or his readers, with some of the same issues that we see Joash displaying. They have things that they want, and they're going about it in all of the world's ways first before they go to God about it. Now, hopefully, he's speaking hyperbolically. It'd be wild if people were actually murdering each other in the middle of church because they weren't getting what they wanted. So hopefully, that's hyperbole. But who knows? The world was wild back then. And even, he says, when they do go to God as a last resort, they don't get what they want because they are asking wrongly. They are asking for their will rather than asking for the Lord's will. They're treating him like a tool or a resource to gain access to the things that they desire rather than submitting their desires to the will of God so that his desires become theirs. Joash eventually came to God as a last resort. But his second mistake is trying to use God as a resource. He comes lamenting not the death of Elijah, not the loss of Elisha's influence in the kingdom. He comes lamenting the weakness of his army. He says, "Oh, the chariots and the horses of Israel." He's like, "I don't have any. They're dead. My dad got them stabbed." His main concern is that this might be his last chance to get something from God because Elisha serves him and he doesn't. So he needs to get a call in before the line is closed. Elisha is a tool, an access point to get to a resource, and that resource is the living God that Joash should be serving as the king of Israel. So Joash is treating the situation like it's a going out of business sale at a local furniture store or like a garage sale on your street. He's saying to himself, I should pop by and see what I can get a good deal on, and apparently decides to bring his bow and arrow along with him, which I still think is really suspicious, and I didn't really think about it until now. There is no intention of heart change. There is no seeking the Lord's will for the nation. Repeatedly, we see a different behavior from the kings that serve God. And notably, the difference is how they approach it. When the kings that are faithful to God throughout the Old Testament approach the prophet, they say, "Hey, what is the will of God?" And then the prophet is like, "Oh, it's this." And then if they do that, stuff works out. And if they don't, bad stuff happens. But Joash is looking at it from the outside, and he's seeing these kings go to God and then get what they want. And he's like, perfect. I can buy what I need from God. He thinks it's a transaction. Whoa, we just talked about that too. Holy smokes. So he is treating God like a resource. This is highlighted, I think, really, really well in one particular story about one of the predecessors of Joash. His name is Ahab, and he's the guy that Elisha's mentor, mostly was arguing with. Ahab was king of Israel at the time that Jehoshaphat was king of Judah, and they decided to go to war together. This story is in 1 Kings chapter 22, and usually they're fighting against each other, but they decided to go to war together. They're like, let's work together. We're like blood kin. We should probably stop stabbing each other, and it's a great idea. But before they go, Ahab's like, hold on, come to Samaria and let's have a party. And Jehoshaphat is like, that sounds awesome. I love that. Before we go get stabbed, let's have a party. Jehoshaphat, it says, served God and was faithful to the one true Lord. So he shows up, and this is like not probably the party that Jehoshaphat was thinking, because they're like sitting by the front gate, and Ahab is having all of his pagan prophets and all of his pagan priests march by and make sacrifices to their gods and prophesy victory over them and all this kind of crazy stuff. And I imagine a very uncomfortable Jehoshaphat is leaning over, and he says to the king, he says, is there not up in here a prophet of the Lord that we can ask what's going on with the Lord's thoughts? And Ahab's answer is great, because he says, we got one. and his name is Micaiah, but I really hate that dude because he always says that God is mad at me and prophesies bad stuff for me, and then the bad stuff happens. So I don't want to do that one. And Jehoshaphat is like, yeah, that one. That sounds right. Let's get him out here. And so they get him out there, and Micaiah shows up, and he's like, oh, Ahab, God says he's a big fan of you, and he's a big fan of your work, and everything's going to go fine in the battle, and stuff's going to work out lickety-split. Don't even sweat it. And even Ahab knows this is baloney. He's like, come on, man, shoot straight with me, Micaiah. Don't do this in front of my boy Jehoshaphat. We just became buds, and you're embarrassing me. And so Micaiah is like, yeah, no, God thinks you stink. You're the worst. And if you go do this war, you're going to get killed. Jehoshaphat, you're going to be okay. You're going to get stabbed and die. You're going to be a dead guy. And Ahab's like, I friggin' knew it. This guy always says bad stuff to me. And so he looks at Jehoshaphat. He says, okay, we should still go to war because I don't like that guy anyway, so forget about him. But here's what we're going to do. I'm going to dress like a normal soldier, and you wear all of your normal kingly garb because you'll be fine. And that way I'm hidden, and no one's going to stab me because they think I'm the king. And Jehoshaphat wildly is like, yeah, that sounds good. So they go to the fight. We've passed into tangent territory because all we needed was the beginning of this, but this is a wild story and you need to know. They go to the fight. The chariots of the other enemy, they don't have anything to do with the fight. They're just hunting Ahab because this guy sucks so bad. And so they're going after Ahab and they can't find him. Suddenly they see like a guy who's all fancy and they're like, that must be King Ahab, let's go kill him. They ride up to him, it's Jehoshaphat. And Jehoshaphat's like, hey. And they're like, that's not Ahab. And he's like, no, I'm not Ahab. And they're like, dang. And so they ride away. And it says like, as they're riding away, one of the random chariot guys that was hunting for Ahab turned around and just like shot a random arrow. And the random arrow hit a random soldier in the back between the shoulders. And that random soldier was King Ahab. And so Ahab still died. It's wild, man. It's wild. And Jehoshaphat, like, just left and was fine and lived, like, a long, happy life and was a really good king. Anyway, Ahab and the point is, I love the Bible so stinking much, you guys. It is so much fun. Anyway, Ahab and Joash make the same mistake. Their relationship with God is transactional. If they can't get what they want from him, they don't want to have anything to do with him. If the going out of business sale doesn't have anything that I want, I'm not going to stick around and help the salesman move product because I'm not there for the salesman will and to support the salesman vision and to help build the salesman's kingdom. I think all too often we accidentally, and maybe sometimes deliberately, treat God like a going out of business sale at a local furniture store. And we show up, and if he doesn't have what we want, we leave because we're not there to serve him. We're not happy, we're not thrilled, we're not ecstatic about the opportunity to be part of the kingdom and serve his purposes and bring others to the glory that is his love. We are there for something for us. And if he doesn't give it to us, then he's the problem. It's not us. We aren't looking for obedience, we're looking for a clearance sale. And that is Joash's last major mistake in this story is that he's not looking for obedience. Even when he gets a word from God, he is reluctant to obey. Joash finally receives a word. Despite the ongoing mistakes of his life, despite everything up to this point, God offers him a blessing through Elisha. And like is often the case with prophecies we see in the Old Testament, it is very dramatic. I don't think this is the most dramatic. Not even close. I think that cake gets awarded to Ezekiel, who spent like a year doing performance art and had to cook food with poop. And that's wild. That's insane. So this is fine. This isn't so bad. But even so, Joash failed even in this. Elisha instructs him, take up your bow, and he takes up his bow. He says, draw your bow. He draws his bow. Then Elisha gives him a big old hug, and I imagine Joash was very uncomfortable with that. They shoot the arrow out the window. He says some nice things. He says, grab those arrows and smack the dirt. He grabs the arrows, he smacks the dirt a couple times, and then Joash is in trouble because he didn't smack the dirt enough. And then the next verse, Elisha dies. He's just dead. That's it. He's just dead after that. It's like, you did a bad job. You're only going to beat him 3 times. But that's nuts. So Joash does everything wrong and still is offered a blessing from the Lord, which is wild. It's almost like we serve a loving, merciful God or something. And even in this, he doesn't follow through. I can just imagine Joash's face when Elisha hugs him. I've already said I think he was uncomfortable. Like, he hates this guy. and he's also sick, and they didn't have good hygiene back then, so it had to be nasty. And so he's just mad. And then you can almost see Joash rolling his eyes as he's like, now, okay, pick up those other arrows, young man. And Joash is like, God, I'm the king. This is stupid. I'm not going to beat the ground. Okay, I'll beat the ground with the arrow. To Joash, these things are arbitrary. This is stuff that is in the way of him getting the blessing that he is here for. He's not here to submit. He's not here looking to follow the instructions of the Lord. These are charades, and they are interfering with his blessing. Because at any moment, Elisha could die, and then we see, Elisha does. Worry was justified. So he doesn't follow through. He doesn't perform what is commanded because he is here to get the blessing. He isn't here for the things leading up to it. But that isn't how this works. The Lord's blessing here is tied directly to Joash's obedience. Joash follows through with reluctance. He isn't seeking to satisfy the command. He is trying to get it over with, to get it out of the way so that he can be done with God and he can move on with his day. He isn't here for God. He's here for the blessing. But that was the point of the instructions from Elisha. God is looking for enthusiastic obedience. And sometimes the greatest obstacle between us and the victory God wants us to experience is our own reluctance to follow his instructions. The victory was Joash's. He had already prophesied not only victory over Syria, but that he would beat them until that there was an end of them. But Joash stopped short. He didn't follow through. He didn't finish the task. We speak angrily sometimes that God won't tell us his will, that we don't know what to do next, when all he wants from us sometimes is to just continue in faithful obedience to the instructions that he has already given us. Until the job is finished or until you receive new orders, you obey enthusiastically. Joash stopped early. He didn't follow the task to the end, and because of that, the greater victory slipped away for all of Israel. He doomed his people because he wouldn't listen. And so naturally, this makes me think of the Austro-Turkish War of 1788. You thought we were going to get through this without a historical story, and you look ridiculous now. Here, the Holy Roman Emperor, Joseph II, which is easily the most boring name, probably, of all of the Holy Roman Emperors. Joseph went to war with the Ottoman Empire, and he marched an army of 100,000, mostly Austrian dudes, down towards Romania. And they set up at the city that they're pretty sure the Turks are moving towards. And on a fateful night in September, I think it was the 21st, the first battle of the Austro-Turkic War of 1788, there were several, so that is the specific name of the war. The first battle occurs, and Turkey's not there for it. And Turkey wins. And that's very fun, because that means they were outnumbered 100,000 to 0 and got the W. So here's what happens. They show up, they set up camp, as one is wont to do when they march a very long way with 100,000 people, and then Joseph II sends out some hussars, which is like light cavalry, and he says, go scout out there and make sure the Ottomans aren't nearby. And those hussars are like, yeah, man, I love that idea. So they go do that. Everybody goes to sleep because they're gone for a few hours. And Joseph wakes up to cannon fire and rifle fire in the middle of the night, and he gets up, he's looking all around, everybody's freaking out, and there's cavalry charging at the camp, and everyone's panicking, and he's like, oh no, and they're like, yeah, I know, the Turks are coming. He's like, no, that's our boys, because it was his boys. So we rewind a couple hours. The hussars, they cross the river past the city, they scout for a few hours, and they discover no Turks. They're days away. We're totally safe. On their way back, they encounter a Romani caravan. And the Romani are like, hey, you guys look like you're rich because you got armor and horses. You want to buy these barrels of schnapps? And the hussars are like, well, we're working. And then I imagine one of the other hussars was like, yeah, but there's no Turks around. And he's like, yeah, but we should tell the boss that. And he's like, no, Joseph is fine. We'll tell him in the morning. And so they buy the schnapps, peppermint schnapps, yeah, probably. They buy the schnapps, and they are like, we could finish our orders or get absolutely toasted. So they get absolutely toasted. They get so toasted that hours later, an infantry contingent is sent out to find them because they're like, oh, dang, Turks must be around here and killed our horse boys. And so the infantry goes out, and the infantry finds them, and then the infantry starts to argue with them, which you would think is normal. That's expected, because these guys have gotten toasted while they're supposed to be scouting. But they're not arguing about that. They're arguing because they want some of the schnapps, and the hussars won't give it to them. The hussars built barricades around the barrels and pointed guns at the infantry, and then some itchy trigger-fingered private pulled off a shot, and both sides assumed the other side was Turks that were in disguise and started yelling, "Oh, dang, the Turks are here," and started shooting at each other. And so then the cavalry, because they got horses, they jump up on their horses and they bail, yelling, the Turks are attacking, the Turks are attacking. Meanwhile, the infantry is chasing them and shooting at them, going, "Guys, the Turks are attacking, the Turks are attacking." So all of a sudden, a bunch of horses come out galloping in the middle of the night, shooting off rifles at each other. And the camp is like, "Dang, it's dark." And those guys are yelling that the Turks are attacking, and those guys are shooting at us. And so the cannons start shooting, and all of a sudden, we fast forward 2 days when the Ottomans show up, and there's nobody there. There's over 1,000 dead Austrians in a field and an empty city undefended that they take with ease, because Joseph had to withdraw his forces because they got so panicked that they scattered. So he withdrew and had to recollect everybody and start the whole war over again. So the Ottomans won, and they didn't get there for 2 days because the hussars were like, we followed orders already for a little bit. We probably don't need to finish it off. We should take a break. We done good. Let's get some schnapps. Wild. The lack of obedience of the hussars, which is a very fun word in its own right, cost the entire army the victory. It was a natural consequence. It wasn't God punishing them. It wasn't Joseph II saying, "You boys got drunk, so we're going to shoot at you with cannons because you've been very, very naughty." It was a natural consequence. They made bad decisions. They didn't follow orders. They broke obedience, and bad things happened. The victory was lost. Joash's reluctant obedience cost Israel the long-term victory over her enemies. The lack of victory is sometimes because we haven't done what we were told to do in order to secure the victory in the first place. Sometimes we think the instructions are ridiculous. Joash is like, "Man, why do I got to beat these arrows into the ground? This doesn't make any sense. What's the dirt done to me? I'm the king. Well, I better get this over with. This is stupid, but okay, I'll do what I got to do." Bop, bop, bop. Checks the box off the list. Sometimes we get distracted because we think we have already done enough. Like, "Ooh, schnapps." Well, the enemy's really far away. I've already been obedient for a really long time, so I could take a break. I've been very faithful for a very long time. I haven't messed up in a while. I haven't gotten drunk on the job in a long time. It's probably fine. We're only at war with the second largest empire in Europe. God isn't looking for us to check a box and move on. He is looking for us to humble ourselves and obey him. Jesus says in the book of John, chapter 14, in both verses 15 and 21, that's why he repeats himself. It's so important. He tells them twice, that if you love him, you will keep his commandments. That obedience springs out of our love for him. Our obedience is a sign of our love for him. It flows out of that love. And that love is what the Lord desires. He's after that submission, that passion of our hearts. So of course Joash failed to meet the standards, because the issue wasn't that he didn't beat the ground enough times. The issue was that Joash's heart wasn't submitted to the Lord. If we love the Lord, we will not make the same mistake as Joash. We won't have reluctant or incomplete obedience. If we're obeying out of love, we will have enthusiastic obedience. Don't make the same mistakes as Joash. He got in the way of his own blessing, and we can so easily do the same thing. The victory was prepared, and he disqualified himself from it. Don't make God your last resort. Don't wait until you have made the situation worse by relying on every single other resource available to you, and then go to God. He's waiting and wanting to be our help in time of trouble and our refuge in storms. Go to God first. And when you do, listen for his will. It might be the case that you discover that you've been beating your arrows against a wall, or hitting your head against a wall, because you're like, "Man, this has got to be a door. I got to get this door open." And God's like, "No, that's a wall. I don't want you to go that way in the first place. What are you doing? You're crazy, man." Don't go to God looking to get a transaction. Don't go to God like he's a resource. Go to him seeking his will and pursue his will, because that is where blessing comes from. And when the Lord tells you to seize your arrows, seize your arrows. Beat the ground until he tells you to stop. Have enthusiastic obedience. If you are being obedient to his will, then the victory is coming. And really the only thing that can stop it is if you disqualify yourself. So seize your arrows. Wherever you are, wherever you're waiting for God to bring victory in your life, remember what the arrows were that he told you to hold on to in the first place, and seize your arrows. If it is breakthrough in your children's lives, don't pray for a little while and disciple them for a bit and then say, well, the Lord's probably got it. I've done enough. Either he's got it or he doesn't. That's enough for me. Seize your arrows and obey until the victory comes or he gives you new orders. If you're seeking victory over anger or bitterness or some other sin in your own life, don't fight for a little while and then decide the Holy Spirit will do the rest. Don't sit back and enjoy schnapps instead of beating your arrows. Holding arrows only takes one hand, so you can have the schnapps at the same time. Follow in obedience until the battle is won. Don't stop the victory that the Lord has for you. Seize your arrows and don't stop beating the floor until the Lord tells you to. I have arrows that I need to pick back up. I have arrows that I was told to seize and that I beat for a while, and like my hand cramped or something. I don't even know. And I put them down. I took a break. I was like, I'm good. Maybe I went for some schnapps. I am sure that many, if not most, of us in here have arrows that we realize we need to pick back up, arrows that we never should have put down. So I'd like to pray together. If you have arrows that you need to seize, I know I do, I'd like for us to stand up together and pray together for each other to strengthen each other's grip, I suppose. Metaphoric grip.